I was again reading some of your views on how India story is reviving and it is capturing the attention of investors across the globe, and you did mention something about how this interest was being demonstrated at the World Economic Forum also, where you were there. Would you like to share some of the views on that and how the things are unfolding now?
Sure. First of all, good morning. And this is a really interesting topic. Mohan and I, we were chatting up about this and just before this panel. Ease of doing business. And the reason Saturday morning, first thing we are talking about this, given the importance of this topic, some of you would have followed the online media of this conference overnight. And the most of the write-ups, Patricia, I'm sure you would have seen, is around ease of doing business.
Absolutely.
Yeah? And therefore, the topic is really very, very relevant. Anurag mentioned. When Anurag very, very briefly briefed us, and one of the things came to my mind, I said, is it red carpet or red tape? And the answer came to my mind is a typical investment bankers. I was asked by one important, intelligent client like you, and this client was interviewing various people. So he first called a lawyer, 2 plus 2. What is 2 plus 2? And the lawyer said, yeah, it's simple, 4. Then the client called an accountant. That was Anurag, by the way. And Anurag immediately said, oh, that depends on which accounting standard. And then I was called an investment banker, and I said, okay, what is the answer you have in your mind? So it depends on what Mohan finally wants, a red tape or red carpet. The truth is, if I can just share our learnings from what we hear from important clients like you, there are 2 parts, the problem areas and what has happened in the last 18 months. If you look at the problem areas, there are hard problems, there are some softer issues. As far as hard problems are concerned, is all known, Anurag touched upon in this opening comment. Somewhere we are not getting along with our alphabet L. That's what is creating problem. Land, labor, legislature, and litigation. That is what really hard problem is. Despite all the best efforts of the government, land is known. Anurag mentioned, let's not touch that topic. It's been talked about quite a lot. Labor reforms, the hard labor reforms have not happened, but there are a lot of things happening around it in the softer way. I hope the parliament functions and finally the important bills like GST gets passed. The litigation is something which worries us. Given the structure of the country, even if the decisions are being made, it gets litigated, it goes to the court, and that delays the process. The softer part, that's something which is an easy one. In terms of, the smaller issues which are more of an irritant than the real issues. Things like information sharing, right? There is a tendency to ask the same information repeatedly. There is a duplication of work. The information is available, but one department versus other department, they don't share with each other. There is a deficit, trust deficit between industry and the government. And Mohan touched upon that very beautifully in terms of, how should we build that trust deficit. They don't, if you submit an information, you are supposed to have additional certification from PwC so that that information is, whether it's valid or not, right? So that's the kind of trust deficit between the government and the industry. There is a tendency to protect yourself. If I'm making a decision, I would want to protect so that tomorrow no one can ask any question to me. That delays the whole process. The time for the commitment to time, there's an issue around that because we all know if we have to make investment, there's a time value of money. We want a decision to happen, the project to get implemented in a fixed period of time. Now, so these are the softer problems. What is happening? What have we seen? What do we hear from our clients? I think there is one very smart thing which the government has done in the last 18 months is learn from evolution which has happened in the telephony space. We took a jump start from fixed line to online, to mobile telephony. And you saw the impact of that. I guess very smartly the government is doing the same thing. They're moving away from manual intervention to making things online. creating more, by the way, Mohan, for you, there's a lot of job for Infosys, right? So creating more online. Two of my clients told me yesterday, this is latest. One of them is a new entrant into India. He wanted to set up, this is a large global corporation, wanted to set up a BPO business here. And they said their experience is within 7 days, no manual intervention, no interaction, online application, all approvals came in and they started the shop. This is unheard of in India. It has not happened in the past.
Very good.
The second, existing clients from one of the southern states, they need to renew, they get a renewal every year, right? They told us that this time for renewal, they didn't have to visit any office, online application, within 7 days, without any intimation, the approval came. And that was a big surprise to them. They've been in India for many years. On time commitment, again, we are seeing that the government is sticking to their time commitments. There are large contracts getting awarded now within the time frame. In fact, I was with a large global corporation day before yesterday, and this was a big contract, and he said that the entire bid document was completely foolproof. Only thing, they had to put the price and the signature. And it just went completely within the time. Earlier, the same thing used to take 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. There was no time limit. So there is definitely conscious efforts and there's a work happening towards that. And I'm sure if we continue to move in this direction, are we there as a red tape, a red carpet? I think we may not be there as a completely red carpet, but I guess we are moving in that direction. We are on the right track, and hopefully if we continue to move ahead, we'll achieve that. Yep. So and that is the reason why my comments that people are looking at. In fact, I can tell you, we serve 540 global corporations at HSBC in the business which I run, and most or almost all of them are thinking positive about India.
Very good.
Thanks, Sunil. I think this is very encouraging coming from a banker who deals with so many large corporations that there is a positive sentiment about India and things are moving in the right direction. And thanks, Sunil, for your views on this. Tricia, just one thing I would want to understand from you from an international community perspective. Where do you see things moving as far as India is concerned? And B, what do you think can we learn from UK as far as ease of doing business in India is concerned?
Well, thank you very much indeed, Anurag, and fascinating to hear both sets of comments. Look, it is clearly getting better. It's great to have these specific examples because those resonate with all of you. Those can be fed back loud and clear to British businesses who aren't yet in India, particularly the SMEs. So it is clearly getting better, and India's extraordinary gift for the digital world is being used very powerfully, I think, to transform ease of doing business. At the same time, there is an awful lot of red tape still left. We heard the Diageo example yesterday, 250,000 permits required every year. That's pretty horrific. At the same time, as Ivan Menezes made very clear, it doesn't stop them doing really good business. What it does do is make it more costly, more difficult, and it slows down the rate of expansion. So there's no doubt the quicker the government moves and the state governments move to deal with all this stuff, the faster India will grow and generate jobs. Fundamentally, this is not about is it holding FDI back, it's about is this holding India back, and clearly it is. But in terms of what can be learnt from the UK, at one point I was the minister with responsibility for cutting red tape. We have a lot of experience in the UK government, which the David Cameron's government is sharing very directly, both with GOI and with state governments, including Maharashtra, for instance, about how you overcome the desire, often highly well-intentioned, of your officials to kind of dot every I and cross every T and, you know, add more and more and more and more layers of complexity. So that can be shared and that will be helpful. And the UK can also learn a great deal from India about how to digitize government. But the thing that really worries me, and it comes back to Mohan's point about capability in government, and I speak here as an ex-minister, I think there is a huge danger of unintended consequences when ministers and officials act. I was very struck by the example Stuart Paver gave us yesterday, the shoe company. They want to manufacture in India, and they want to manufacture world-class shoes to go on selling in India. At the moment, they're importing them. They want to manufacture them here. But if they go to a manufacturer in India that is selling to export markets and therefore has global standards, what do they find? Because of the tax regime, they have to export those shoes and then re-import them before they can sell them to Paver's England's customers here in India. And the reason for that is there's a hugely well-intentioned tax regime if you're an exporter, a manufacturing exporter. And of course, those manufacturing companies do not want to find themselves with two different tax regimes, one as an exporter, one as a domestic producer. And so a tax regime that I have no doubt was created years ago to incentivize exports has actually had the effect of undermining domestic manufacturing, and domestic manufacturing to world-class standards, which is what Make in India is all about. I think we saw something very similar earlier this year with the, again, very well-intentioned announcement about MAT, minimum alternative tax. Designed to create clarity, it actually created a completely disastrous situation where international investors around the world were on the verge of pulling their money out of India.
Yeah.
Now, that got dealt with. Finance Minister, of course, realized, I have no doubt, he had been badly advised. The thing had been taken in exactly the opposite, really. It had been taken to mean the opposite of what he'd intended. And within about 3 months, it was sorted out. Much better if these things don't happen in the first place. And for me, the key thing I learned very early on as a minister was if you want to achieve a certain goal, and that's going to need some new regulations or changes to old regulations, for heaven's sake, get some of the people who are going to be affected or who are advising clients who are going to be affected, get them in to look at the drafting. Get them in to talk about the smartest way of achieving your objective, and don't leave it to your officials. It doesn't matter how bright, how well-intentioned they are, and all the rest of it. There is always a risk because they're not in the world of business or universities or whatever it is you're trying to regulate for, that they will get it wrong. So consult first rather than having to do the backtrack afterwards.
If I can just pick up on what Patricia said, I think very, very interesting points. I must clarify, Patricia, on your behalf, when she talked about that she was minister in charge of cutting red tape, she was talking about the different red tape, inaugurating various programs. So that red tape. So just a couple of points which, Patricia, which you mentioned, which is very, very important. One, you touched upon the state, actually. We have and I'm sure some of you, as you were driving down from the airport to this place, you would have seen the number of billboards. And those billboards are from the states. The state of Tamil Nadu is having an investment summit. State of Karnataka participated here in this conference. My state, Maharashtra, Chief Minister is in Tokyo, canvassing for investment. We hosted Chandrababu Naidu some time back in China. So this is the first time we are seeing states are competing with each other. And this ranking part, which Anurag talked about, the ranking is going to come out. First time the central government is going to rank states on the basis of ease of doing business. There are some progressive states that are definitely going to make sure that they want to be on the higher because the investments will flow depending on where the ranking is. Similarly, on taxation, you are absolutely right that there is a consultative approach. I can tell you in my 25 years, I haven't seen the amount of consultation this government is doing. In fact, pre-budget consultation has already started. I was in North Block yesterday and I was asked some question in terms of anything and largely on the taxation side. We saw the way MAT got resolved almost, pending issues like transfer pricing. And I understand that export issue. Once we get into that consultation, which Mohan mentioned, I think a lot of these issues will get resolved. And the government definitely is willing to listen. That is a big change. They are willing to listen. They are willing to really follow up if there is anything which is important.
Completely agree with you about this dynamic between the states, which we were also discussing yesterday in the competitive federalism one. And I think, Amitabh Kant, who spoke yesterday and whom we've seen a great deal of since he became Secretary of DIPP, he is absolutely a force for, if he hears about a problem, he gets the details, gets on top of it and moves. So I think all of that is a big change in the culture and approach of the government of Delhi, the government of India, and hopefully that will intensify.
Sure.